Welcome back, everybody. It's long overdue. I'm excited to bring it back. This is our first educational Smurf lobby in some time. And today I have started with a 2600 average game where I will be playing mid lane. And I want to talk about this bracket specifically because all of my educational Smurf games, I'm going to be going for showing you what I think is the ideal way to win in this bracket, the ideal skills that must be developed to win in this bracket. That is not always like, okay, this only applies to 2.5k, right? I think almost anything you guys learn in this video would apply to all brackets, but this is the type of stuff that we need. And the lower we go in MMR, it's going to be more and more apparent that this is just enough to win the game and you don't need to do anything super fancy. So there is two formulas that I would like to highlight before we get into the video of what I think is crucial for solo carrying the game from the mid lane at the 2k bracket. I think the three most important facets of the hero that you're playing in order to win the game must be: first, one, they have some sort of flash farming potential. Two, they must have some way to take objectives, at least towers. And three, that they have some way to solo kill heroes and scale into the late game. Those are the three things that I think are the most important. Solo killing heroes in the mid game is not nearly as important. It's like that farm accelerant in the mid game, tower taking, objective taking once you've gotten that farm accelerant, and then being able to kill people later. That's how you finish it off. So then we look at your item progression from the mid lane. The way that I look at it is your first item allows you to accelerate your farm, something like a Kaya, something like a Witchblade. Your second item allows you to make plays, something like a Blink, something like an Atos, a Yule Scepter. Your third item makes you unkillable, something like a BKB, a Bloodstone, a Linken's, something like this. Your fourth item gives you team fight presence, often in the form of something like a Shiva's, a Lotus, a Lincoln, something that allows you to go in and initiate first. And your final item gives you solo kill potential. So for heroes that have built-in disables, something that gives you a lot of damage. Heroes that don't have built-in disables, that's almost always a Hex. So this formula, aligned with the three components that we talked about, are what I believe make the best solo carrying hero potentials. Now, the important thing about this is not every hero has all three of these things. Most heroes don't. So if you only choose two of these things, that's fine too. But what that means is if your hero doesn't have flash farming capabilities, maybe you'll never hit your timings. If your hero doesn't have the ability to kill buildings, maybe you're at the mercy of your carry. The list goes on of like what you might be lacking if you don't have these three things. But that's important to keep in mind that those are what I think solo carry the game. So the hero that I have chosen for today's video is Leshrac. And that is because his ulti gives him flash farm potential. His facet that leaves his W doing damage to towers is the one that I took today because that gives him damage to towers. And then he can build into the late game Shiva's Hex that gives him the solo kill potential and the ability to go high ground with his Edict. So without further ado, first Smurf lobby back in action. Enjoy. So we load into the game, and as I stated before, I've picked Leshrac. I've gone for level 1 Lightning Storm in order to help secure CS, and I really like to queue up multiple items in my quick buy based on how I think I'm going to play the lane. Because Void Spirit's not exactly like a move speed based mid laner, I like to go for like the stick for health and mana sustain, plus the Ring of Basilius component of my mana boots, because I'm not really going to be leaving lane until at least like 4 to 5 minutes, and Leshrac's already a pretty fast hero, so I don't need my boots that early. So this is me kind of mapping out my first 3 to 4 minutes of buying items. That's something you can often learn to do playing from the mid lane, and it's good to at least consider when the game starts, because sometimes things do change, but getting a good gauge of like the bottle plus the first couple small items you're going to buy is definitely worth planning at the very beginning of the game. So what I really like to do as ranged heroes is immediately start hitting melee heroes when I'm against them. Leshrac, I did take the facet that gives me mana from hitting people, so that means it's even better, and I casted a spell right at the start in order to maximize the mana that I'm using. So right here, I actually think I was a bit overly aggressive, and he got like 2 or 3 hits off on me. I think I could have just played a bit more passively. I was trying to body him away from the CS, but it didn't really work out how I planned. Keep in mind that I'm not actually a mid laner, so my mechanics are not spectacular. But one thing that's a really good note here is notice how pretty much every one of my creeps that's dying, I try to be hitting it. Like, I try to make sure I'm making his life a little bit more difficult. I don't want him to just get free CS. Notice how I get that free CS. I don't want him to get that. I want to be messing with him in this case, putting a lot of pressure on. And it's something that you don't need to be the best at this, but just look at how I'm making sure as often as I can to hit the creep that he's going for. And even though there's a lot of nuance to that specifically, when we're talking about like the 2 to 3k bracket, if you're just making sure as often as possible without getting yourself caught out of position that you are hitting the creep he's going for, that's going to create a lot more confusion and pressure than people in your bracket are used to, and it's already going to be quote-unquote good enough, right? So that's what the beauty of having the creep securing spell is, that it always allows you to get to the range creep. I like aggroing off of the range creep in order to get the deny. I actually messed that up there. But notice how the rune's coming out. So notice how I'm actually being aggressive on him to zone him off of the range creep. But then by trying to get cute with my lightning storm to bounce it off all the creeps and then him, I actually let him get the deny. But that point where you can walk up and posture maybe like 2 or 3 seconds before the creep is going to die when you are winning the lane like this is a great way to secure the creep without having to use a spell. I did the first part correctly, but then I didn't follow it up with making use of saving the mana. I was fine to use the mana because if you look at my mana state with this facet, you actually have a lot of mana, more so than you normally would. So I like to use my Diabolic Edict on Lesh when the opponent walks at me outside of a creep wave. That's just a really nice way to say, hey, fuck off. This is my place to control, not yours. I wouldn't do that if I was like struggling a little bit on mana, but I'm willing to do that when I have a bit more mana to work with. Notice how every single creep, as best as I can, I am harassing and also going for the deny as much as possible, checking other lanes and then utilizing them to aggro to my range here. The reason that I'm willing to aggro to my range as a ranged hero here, I often don't want to do that ranged versus melee, because if you look at the back at the first wave, you'll see that I just clicked him without aggroing. But the reason I'll do it now is because I don't actually mind separating the creep wave and then keeping it on my hill, which is what you're going to see here. So when I pull aggro to my range creep, I separate the creeps and then I do this, right? And this is good to do not at the rune point. Like, I don't want to do this at 345 because then the lane's pushing into me and he gets the rune for free. But I like doing this at like the 3-minute mark, the 1-minute mark if I'm that strong, because now the lane's on my hill and I get absolute control of it. The only issue now is I'm going to miss some CS under tower because I'm not a mid laner and I had a bad gauge of where the lane was going to stop there. But what is created here is that I can actually harass him a bit under tower, mess with his CS. Look how I just keep hitting every creep. Now, it may look like he's just kind of giving me denies for free, but I can guarantee that this is a result of the fact that I'm clicking him a lot more than he's used to. I'm messing with the creeps a lot more than he's used to, making him have to time every creep just a little bit better. He has to like cast spells to try to get them. I don't want the creep to walk into tower without me, so notice how I aggroed him to pull the creep away to the rune. I am going to miss one creep for this, but it's like not, I didn't miss the XP, just the CS. In an ideal world, I wouldn't miss any, but that's just kind of something you have to feel out. So notice how I've just been sitting kind of at full mana for this entire lane because of the fact that I took this facet. I do think the other facet is technically better in my bracket, but this facet is so nice for sustained farming and mana usage in the lane. So it's not as nice for killing, but what it does do is it lets you take this tower. And something I mentioned before the game even started is having a core that can threaten towers with a lead that they have, I think is one of the most essential things to snowballing the early game. Because taking those tier 1 towers and really opening up the map for your team is a huge way to effectively influence the map without ganking. So we want the ganks that we do to potentially turn into towers, and we also want the option to sit in our lane and take the tower. This isn't something that we need to have, but it really gives us so many different options and allows us to basically choose whatever's ideal for this game. So Leshrac against pretty much any melee hero will have a free start like this. There's very few melee heroes that cause him issues. So we're trying to hit this like level 6 timing, pushing with the catapult wave. So notice how we're actually going to be aggressive on him here and walk in. We have our mana boots to fly out to us. I actually struggle a little bit with the courier here, something to be careful of. I always try to fly myself a ward and a sentry around the time that I buy an item, around 5 minutes. It kind of lines up a bit differently. I'm not perfect at this, but sometime between like 4:45 and 5:45, I try to fly myself items with sentry and ward with the courier that has my other items on it, because it's nighttime now. I do not have full vision. Making sure we get to the making sure we get to the rune right at 6 minutes. Absolutely essential. I pop the DD because I want to run at him. He's level 5. I have this timing. I can actually glyph this wave in order to keep my catapult alive. So what I'm going to do is use glyph to keep my catapult alive here. In theory, I should have used it on the creeps. It's really great to use glyph as a hero that is able to pressure the tower. This DD rune's probably the best rune in the game, maybe other than regen, for letting me pressure this tower. So I take a super early tower. I don't even end up needing a ward in the mid lane because I took his tower so early. And now, once we either take the tower or just... there's this sense of establishing control in the mid lane. I think the best approach in this bracket is to play for our own timings and farm. So something that's pretty standard on mid laners like Leshrac that have AoE spells for CSing is to drag 2 camps together in order to farm them. So notice how I'm like checking other lanes to see what's going on, but I'm not exactly like full mana or anything to run to other lanes and gank. I also didn't take the facet that makes my W better for ganking. So now we're just kind of playing for a bit of efficiency, but we don't want to give the enemy mid laner like a free chance to catch back up. We do notice that he's like low mana, not really able to contest us. We are going to secure this area for vision. I noticed that he's going to have a ward here. Like, I just check it. I want to see like, okay, his ward is definitely defensive because he wasn't on my side of the river ever this entire time. So if it was a ward, it had to be like right here or right here. So notice how I push in the lane, and I'm actually going to take this opportunity to loop behind top lane. What I really like about this is it's a bit risky because of the fact that the rune is respawning and I potentially give it to the opponent. But it's just like you can quickly snowball this lead into 2 lanes at once. I end up not even being needed and not even netting a kill, but getting that kill on Drow, suddenly like this free farm mid lane also turned into a free farm top lane. That was already at a bit of an advantage. This is something where we can turn the top lane if they're losing. We can turn it into a massive advantage if they're winning. And the one trade-off was that I didn't get the rune. I tried to TP back to the mid-tier 1, but I TP'd to the outpost, you know, because I'm bad. But we clear the wave. Since we didn't get the rune, we're just going to play for the same rinse and repeat farming pattern of farming these 2 camps together, pulling them into one another, clicking down the creeps that have mana to give them back to me. And we're going to go for the Kaya. Oftentimes, our first item as a mid laner is either a playmaking item like Blink Dagger, or it's an item like Kaya or Witchblade, like certain heroes like Puck by Witchblade, because it allows them to have enough damage to get kills. It makes them more of a threat. Other heroes like Leshrac will go Kaya, or Storm goes Kaya because it accelerates their farm significantly. So making sure that we stack right at the 9-minute mark. Like, this type of efficiency that we're going for is really essential. So what we're going to do is that we're going to ward defensively for ourselves, make sure we don't randomly feed to like an Earth Spirit in our jungle, feel safe to be here, super low HP. And notice how I'm dropping to a point where my mana is almost out, and then I'm going to reset with my item. This is just a nice thing to feel out. I played these camps as long as I could. I got my item. And now I have a really cool timing. I have Kaya for the mana and damage, and then I have full mana, full resources. So the last thing we want to do is be this strong and then not be able to go do other things. So in this case, we're going to push in the mid lane because of the fact that the rune is spawning. So not giving too much control to the opponent mid, even though like we're trying to move around the map. We want to balance like keeping the pressure up, controlling this area without hampering our own farm, right? So I push the lane, I see the guy with the ward, the Necrophos specifically, and I'm like, just run at this guy, we can kill him. So when you have this early game lead, identifying heroes that you can simply run at is really powerful. And as I mentioned with picking Leshrac with this facet, this is what I like, is I have an illusion rune. It can allow me to tank the tower. Sometimes your carries won't be pressuring as much as you would like, so I can just do this and start pressuring the tower, turning every single gank into like a meaningful either a huge kill or a kill plus a tower. Opening up these early towers, it just snowballs this lead so quickly. I'm going to let my Jug finish that off because I see the mid wave is there and I don't want to miss it. So once again, kind of balancing farming with pressuring. So I go pick up the mid wave. Notice how I'm checking the other lanes. I don't have TP for 15 seconds, but I would be willing to TP there. I'm going to use my Diabolic Edict because on Leshrac it helps kill the catapult a lot faster. Otherwise, you don't really have any way to kill that. I wouldn't have used that if there was no catapult. And then I'm going to do what I like to do, which is to invade their camps at the beginning of the minute mark. So notice what's going to happen here is these are the camps that Void Spirit would otherwise take. I think if it was a bit later in the game and I had a bit more farm, then I would have dragged the two camps together. But now I'm like farming backwards on the minute, running into another hero. I'm like, oh, this is an actual real Naga, not just an illusion. That's going to net us a kill. This whole time kind of pushing in mid and then rotating to top or bottom, just depending on the map state. Previously, we saw Necro. The first time we were like looping behind the Drow. And suddenly, like, what happened in the mid lane, this pressure of taking top tower or mid tower into bottom tower has now bled into all three lanes. And we're going to TP back to base in order to reset. It's arguable that we could have actually TP'd mid tier 1 here. This is probably a mistake for me since I killed their mid. And I also had enough mana to push the wave. So I missed a wave and then didn't get a rune. So when I'm looking back on this, I would have much rather TP to mid despite having like 200 mana. I used that stun to break the trees to get my pathing faster, resuming my farming efficiency here. But I think in theory, I would have liked to push out the mid wave, get the 12-minute rune, finish the 12-15 wave, and then come back to here. That's what I would have liked to do in hindsight. But notice how when I TP'd away from top, the biggest emphasis is that gank was over. I don't want to waste time. I want to not keep giving control of mid lane. In this case, Necro was taking mid lane. So if I ever do leave mid lane in a game like this to gank, make sure you don't stay away for too long. Go back to the area that you control. This part of the map is super powerful. Notice how many good opportunities have come from just controlling this area, right? I'm able to like walk under their triangle like this. I'm able to walk towards top. And you see like a 12-to-1 scenario, right? We're absolutely stomping them. But the biggest part about this is that this is what we're doing. We're not giving them any room to breathe. We called for our supports to come play with us. And now, like, maybe your supports don't play with you. But if I didn't have a shield rune, maybe I wouldn't be this far up. But kind of figuring out where's the line on the map? How far up can we play? Now this Drow's like stuck behind his tier 2. This is something that people are not familiar with in the 2K bracket. They don't have mid laners running at them at minute 13. And that's what we want to do, is relentless pressure, kind of feeling it out based on how strong we think we are. Obviously, my sense of exactly how strong I am might be a little bit better than you guys who are trying to emulate this in your 2K bracket. But notice how I'm with my team, and then the second there's a mid lane to be farmed, I TP back, right? Always controlling this area, trying to be there in time for the rune. I haven't even done that flawlessly so far this game, but you can see what I'm trying to accomplish, and it's kind of like a lack of muscle memory on my part because I don't play a lot of mid. So I considered going Bloodstone after this, but what actually I thought here is we're being really aggressive. I want to keep ramping up the aggression. My Axe is finishing his blink, so I want to be able to follow up my Axe going in. So right now we have Axe to initiate, but we needed some follow-up damage, and Blink also helps me get around the map sooner. So what I really like as a formula is acceleration item, playmaking item. It could be like an Atos, right? That if we didn't have setup stuns like Axe or Lion. Into item that makes me impossible to kill. Because what happens here is you're going to see that I want to continue being aggressive, and the opponent is left with the option to 4-man gank me. Like, that is the only thing they can do in this case, because none of them are strong enough to deal with me by themselves. So I'm going to continue doing what I've been doing, thinking I can play this far up. I've got a haste rune. But at this stage of the game, like I said, they only have one option, and I honestly didn't give them the credit of that they're going to make this exact move that they're going to make, which is they smoked across the map as 4, and I'm going to go to mid lane to try to cut it here to be efficient, and I'm going to end up getting caught by this smoke gank. And what we want to be able to do is continue playing as far up as we just did without dying to that same gank. And quite frankly, the only item in the game that solves that problem against the heroes that they have is BKB. Because even though Bloodstone might be like super tanky and accelerate my farm's not really an issue, right? I want to be able to keep playing up in their face and give them no way back in the game. It's nice that my teammates were there to effectively punish and get some counter kills. But now, like, notice I'm going to actually shift my farming to be a bit more passive as an adjustment, being like, okay, I respect it. You guys will smoke gank me and try to kill me. I'm not going to play by myself up in your face anymore. If I were to go on their side of the map, it's going to be following up heroes like Axe that are going to walk in front of me. They're going to initiate. So in this case, where I'm really strong, but I don't want to go first, so I'm willing to be at fights. Never TP to farm. What I'm going to do is walk towards bottom in order to farm, but then I'm like, oh, there's an arcane rune, and it looks like my teammates want to fight. I'm going to TP here to pick up the arcane rune. Say none of this was happening, I would have just walked bottom and farmed the jungle, ready to TP at some point. The only thing I could have really done wrong here is to TP bottom to farm. Whenever you're super strong, never take yourself off the map. And effectively meaning, like, there's a fight that you could be at, and you just aren't because of the fact that you TP'd somewhere. So that's like a huge rule of thumb. Always be available to your team if you're trying to farm an item timing like BKB. In this case, I'm going to run through mid and back off. I'm not like super invasive right now. Like, notice how I'm just kind of clearing waves and then running at the person I see farming by themselves. I don't want to try to like push into their triangle. I'm not trying to kill buildings right now. That's because I'm in the midst of finishing a timing. So I'm willing to go for like small plays on the map where I'm like, maybe Drow's here and I can find him. I even go for a scan trying to be invasive, but he's not there, so it's fine. If I'm able to bully their carry out of this area, that eliminates options for where he could possibly be. My axe is actually going to find him over here. I see him on the map here. I'm going to try to connect, but he does end up getting away. My Juggernaut doesn't really have the awareness on the map that the Drow's there, and that's perfectly fine. It's just stuff that, like, we're only worrying about what we can control, right? I do think the Jug could have just killed him there. But notice how every little play we make, we're going to make our way back to mid lane. I'm looking at the mini-map this whole time. I'm like, oh, mid lane's pushing in. Got to get back there. It's also 1750, so we want to be back there for the 18-minute rune. Whenever you're playing mid, getting really used to this cycle of be away from mid, outside of the runes, be back for mid when the runes spawn. This Naga wasn't doing a great job of denying the runes. I actually assumed that he was going to send illusions at the top rune and kill it. He didn't do that, but I just assumed he did. So we're going to go back to, like, dragging creeps into each other. Because of the fact that I'm doing Ancients, like, Leshrac does utilize a lot of mana to do Ancients, so I'm just going to use all of my mana and purposely, like, go back to base. The one thing we don't ever want to do is hamper our farm by not casting enough spells, but we also don't want to stay on the map when we don't have enough mana and health to be useful. So this type of downtime, despite being up by 15k, does happen. And it's important that we keep this to a minimum, but it's usually when we're really close to an item timing. So in this case, like, I'm working towards my BKB. I'm going to finish these camps as much as I can before I go base. And then I'm going to try to look around the map a little bit, see what my teammates are up to. I see that my Ogre's smoked. I see that my Lion's looking. And in this case, we don't want to TP anywhere unless it's to our team. Because if we TP bottom to farm, for instance, to get our BKB, then we're doing the same thing where in the next 80 seconds, I'm going to have BKB, I'm going to be strong, so the only place I will TP is to my team. That is super important. I either would have TP'd here or I would have walked bottom in order to farm. I could have also walked top, but that's where Axe was. So notice how my Axe, despite having Blink Blade Mail, is being pretty passive on the map. And that's fine. I'm just kind of walking forward because I see Void Spirit bottom as well as Naga and Necro mid. Like, I feel comfortable to walk here to be aggressive enough to farm their side of the map. But now I'm only going to go behind the Axe. Like, notice how I'm going to let him walk in first. My Lion's going to walk in first. Once I have my BKB, I'll feel comfortable walking in first. But until that point, I'm going to effectively hide like this and make sure I'm not the target that gets initiated onto. In an ideal world, it'd probably be Jug pushing the wave. We don't want our Initiator Axe to be showing. But what happens here, I've noticed, is that oftentimes when people are really far ahead, especially in lower brackets, people will overly group. So what I don't want to do is sit with them in the mid lane in a predictable manner. So I got my BKB, which allows me to blink aggressively on the Drow, regardless if he has teammates behind him. That's the point of this BKB, is that I can make these plays with no fear of something going wrong. And so I'm just going to keep running at them because I've got this regen rune. There's really nothing they can do to stop me because I've got this BKB. I also happen to have a regen rune going, which is really handy. And we just force out crucial spells. And at this point, what's really important is that we don't sit around here for too long. We still have BKB, which is nice. We can be aggressive, but we're going to, like, take their camps. I really want to go for this top wave. I noticed this. I noticed this. So the timer in which I want to stay mid is low. I'm like, okay, let's try to get this tower, which we did. Now let's back off and farm. There's no reason to stick around here. This is something that you'll see in your 2K games a lot. What I like communication-wise is, hey, guys, go fix lanes. Don't get stuck in this, like, bait situation where everyone lingers on the towers too much. So we're going to go push the lanes. Play for farm at all times. Keep accelerating. It shows when we look at our net worths. Like, our net worths are double the opponent's. It's funny to see that Juggernaut's net worth is higher than me. I guess that's what happens when you have, you know, a Battle Fury free farm. That's actually fascinating to me that his net worth is higher than me here. Since nobody went and fixed this bottom lane, I'll often communicate, hey guys, I'm fixing bottom. We can fight afterwards. Buy myself a bunch of items. I always tell my team, be careful until I get there. I always try to connect back to them. So what's going to happen is I'm going to farm my way back towards my team here. It's really crucial that you immediately connect after clearing a wave, because you don't want what's happening on the mini-map right now, which is the opponent running towards your team and getting a 5v4. So I am trying to be as fast as possible. That W was a misclick. Didn't mean to do that. Once again, also checking the rune timing. I end up getting a rune because I've had control of mid lane this entire time. And notice how my biggest emphasis is the time that I'm off the map farming, because I'm hitting an item timing, or the time that I'm off the map in terms of helping my team where I'm fixing a lane. I try to minimize that as much as possible. If I had to guess, it's been like a minute and a half this entire time that I've effectively not been with my team or been able to be with my team quickly. So that's the biggest part about this stage of the game to maintain efficiency, is this idea that we want to be able to be with our team as often as possible, but we're not actually with them very often. That's what I want you guys to think, is like, I'm never TPing away from my team and then staying there. It's like, maybe I'll TP away from my team sometimes, but it's like a brief disconnect rather than, you know, having my farming patterns be away from my team after a TP. Whenever I TP, my farming patterns tend to be towards my team, while the only time I'll farm away from them is when my TP is available, like right now. So in this case, the opponent's doing what kind of naturally happens, which is the Void Spirit's farming the bottom half of the map. Like, he's starting to realize, like, I'm taking their side of the map. Jug's taking the entire top half of the map. So now Void Spirit's, you know, doing some split push dodo, and we're going to run at him as long as we think we might kill him. But then he gets away, and guess what? We go right back to mid, push it out, 23:45. It's like there's a timer in our head, right? So we're going to make sure we're here for the rune. After we have the BKB, we go for the big team fight item. Shiva's goes really well with Blink in general. Any hero that goes Blink, Shiva's is just really nice. Because you can activate the Shivas, then Blink, and it follows with you. Of course, Shiva's buffs up spell damage heroes immensely. The armor's really nice against Drow. So right now, I'm like, I just want to maximize the BKB duration that I have. I'm allowed to be this far up on the map by myself because I have the BKB. It's like, in theory, Bloodstone would accelerate my farm faster, but I can't be by myself and potentially get gone on by 5 heroes with a Bloodstone, but I can with a BKB. So one thing that's really nice about this moment that I would like to pause is I actually wanted my Jug to push top lane into this tower, because I felt like that was the next objective that I wanted to take. But what's actually happening here is that my Jug went mid and my team is looking to invade triangle. So one thing that's really nice when you feel like, oh, I want to take this tower, that's the objective I think is very natural right now, and one of your teammates is not doing what you kind of like expected them to do, is that instead of worrying about this creep wave, because a lot of people would actually go farm this creep wave, we can cut the next creep wave, which doesn't require us to go nearly as far away from our team, and then try to connect with them where they are. Right, so they're playing for the bottom half of the map. I'm just going to kill this wave and look to potentially connect to them based on whatever happens next. Like, I can play for farm efficiency if I want, but I think it's better in these cases to be towards my team and make sure that the opponent does not get an opening. So notice that the opponent does go on my Ogre. I see this. I pop my Haste Rune. I'm ready to connect. That's why it's really important that we don't go back to top. We immediately jump the back lines. We BKB, so like Naga doesn't sleep us or anything. We don't want to get randomly Necroscythed, even though we already used it. And that's a perfect case of how I adjusted to my teammates doing something different than what I thought. And a lot of times people will try to force the objective that they wanted, and they'll end up away from their team. So finding like a healthy balance there is absolutely essential. Spending the time that they're dead, I got my Shivas completed during that fight. I am spending the rest of my mana farming. I could go for the towers, but honestly, I don't prioritize tier 2 towers that highly myself. I generally will play for my own farm efficiency. So like when I'm at this stage of the game, what I'm thinking is the formula so far. It's farm accelerant with the Kaya. Playmaking potential with the Blink. Now that I have aggression playmaking potential, I'm going to go for the item that keeps me alive, which is BKB. Then I'll go for a big teamfight item. That's almost always what I'll go for next. What is the most powerful teamfight presence item that I can buy? Actually, I just think Shivas is by far the best teamfight item on a hero like Leshrac that buys a Blink. But then the next item I like to go, almost irregardless of what heroes are on my team, is giving myself the potential to get solo kills. I feel like at this stage of the game, if you have followed this formula and you can buy an item that gives you solo kill potential, it's like we no longer have to rely on communicating with our Lion, making sure he's in position, following up our Axe. We can be ready to follow up our teammates, but we can also just look to make our own plays. So you may have guessed it. I am going to go for a Hex. I try to tell my Juggernaut to push top. He's not going to do that again. So guess what? We're going to resume the same plan as I did before, which is to cut top wave. We're doing the exact same thing. I even drew on the minimap like, let's push top, but my Jug played mid. Perfectly fine. We don't want to feel like panicked and overrushed. I do feel like a lot of the submissions and questions I've received during my classes has been about moments like this. So we just cut that wave. Don't have to worry about it too much. And we play with our team. It's like, yeah, our Lion went top and arguably like we didn't necessarily want him to do that, but it's also fine that he did do that. So we can take this tower ourselves. And even though I do think the other facet is technically better on paper, I really prefer to have some way to kill buildings myself so that when my carries don't kill the buildings when I want them to, that I can do it myself. So in this case, we have Aegis. I kind of was like, maybe we should fix bottom lane. But because I have BKB, because we have Healing Ward, it's not quite level 20 on Jug, so the timing's not perfect, but we can at least poke this down. It's really hard to fight into us. We can force the glyph. And I'm just not afraid since I have BKB at this point. At this point, we're so far ahead. Oftentimes, I would probably fix bottom lane, but when we're this far ahead, I'm pretty much ready to go. I don't ever really want to dive here because they do have counterplay potential that I'm just like, make them fight into us. Why dive? It's like, we could dive, but if I think to myself, if they don't hit us, we're going to kill their buildings, then I'll let them hit us. Like, let them walk up and hit us. There's no reason to force the dive. It's not like it's perfect because I am half mana. So now, whenever this happens, I always say reset. We got a crucial objective. I'm going to push bottom. Be careful, guys. If my team decides to stay around top and dive base, it is what it is. I will always communicate when I think it's relevant to my team that I left, right? So in this case, what I'm thinking is I want to leave, reset the 2 lanes, get my item, and go again. Because we've got a 5-minute Aegis. We don't need to rush. Jug still has another 2.5 minutes on it, right? So what's really cool about this is this whole process of fix the lanes, finish your next big item, go again. This is the reset portion that a lot of people don't do. And I get asked a lot about what do I do when my teammates don't do this? The best thing you can do is simply communicate that you are doing this. So I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to finish my item. I want to be full mana, so I'm going to go back to base. We'll still have time on the Aegis. These are the things that I was saying during the game. If my team decides to fight without me, so be it. But I end up finding a random Void Spirit here. It ends up being quite a clowny death for him. I guess he ran out of remnants. And I'm like, oh, well, he's still there. I guess I'll stun him. And he dies. Wasn't really expecting that little bonus kill there, but I'm going to go back to base. And inevitably, what we want to do now is utilize the end of this Aegis timing to get another lane of racks. Make sure that we go out on the map. So there's a lot of times this game where I spend maybe 45 seconds to like a minute and a half where I'm technically not in fight mode. In the rest of the game, even though I am farming the majority of the time, I am in fight mode. Like, I am ready to fight with my team. So one big crucial takeaway for you guys is this idea of balancing I'm in fight mode or not. And when I'm not in fight mode, I need to communicate to my team that I'm not in fight mode. Because what ends up happening is a lot of the disasters happen when your team thinks that you're there or that you guys are strong, which is correct, and that you guys should be able to make something happen, and you don't want to right now because you're finishing a timing. So then we hit this really clear timing, have the sheep stick, allow my axe to initiate, follow up on the drow, and we obviously just run them over with sheer money here because we have so many more items than they have, and the game is naturally going to end there. So I know this game was the first game back to Educational Smurf, and it was quite a stomp. But for me, what it's showing is this is a picture-perfect formulaic way to play the game. And oftentimes I've found up until about 3K to 3,500, like I have a decent amount of people who submit replays to me where they're really good at farming. Like they get to like 3.2, 3.5K, and they're really good at farming. But then that's kind of where they taper off. Like they don't either have, like if you're around 3K, you're either hyper efficient at farming, but you're not doing making sure you can join your team all the time, cutting waves rather than playing away from them, or you're not efficiently farming enough to effectively separate from your team a majority of the time, but then play with them or be able to play with them the majority of the game. So what I wanted to show here is this nice like play around mid on the 2-minute rotations of the runes, getting a really good feel for that, using your mana to farm back to base. This is very relevant on a lot of mids. For instance, like Leshrac and Storm, I think are two of the best examples. Making sure that the downtime you have where you don't have resources or you don't have items is as minimal as possible, and getting a good feel for like, oh, I'm going to be farming my way back to base and then TPing out towards my team, or I'm going to be walking away from my team. The TPs away from base, I believe those are something that people flounder a lot. They will TP away from their team ends up getting in a fight, and people will say like, why did my team fight without me? I TP'd bottom. But the fact is, probably needed to communicate you TP'd bottom, and you probably shouldn't have TP'd bottom in the first place if you were strong enough to fight. That's like the worst feeling in the world, where you see your mid laner have like blink BKB and they TP'd away from the team. That's like a really bad feeling for the rest of your team to have. So I do hope you guys enjoyed this educational Smurf. We'll be doing lobbies once a month. Our goal is to get an educational Smurf video every week or two. As part of the content moving forward. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments, and I look forward to hearing from you. See you in the next one.